and good morning. My name is Sergeant Hofelds. Today I will be conducting a virtual brief on effective listening and the leader. At this time, I would like to thank Sergeant Burnett and Sergeant Diego for joining me today. The overall risk assessment is low. We are in an indoor environment today, so there's not a whole lot you have to be wary of, except for some trips, slips, and falls. Be mindful of cords, pets, and children. And dehydration is still a thing, so make sure you're consuming lots of water, but do not exceed 4 to 8 ounces per hour. Make sure you're drinking to satisfy your thirst, and then just a little bit more. So let's look at our learning objectives. The learning objective today is to increase knowledge of individual and leadership skills to employ concepts of trust, resilience, performance, and energy management. The agenda today, I'll be going through the introduction, listening models, types of listening, empathetic listeners, nonverbal communication, mindfulness and silence, listening tips, paraphrasing a conclusion, and I would like to ask that you refrain from asking any questions until the end of the brief. The purpose today is to look at how to be an effective leader by first becoming an effective listener. Do you think that you are an effective listener? Let's evaluate. Do you stop what you're doing and when others speak to you? Do you reflect back what you hear to create clarity? And do you ask questions? Some other things that effective listeners do are they are mentally prepared to listen. They're open-minded and unbiased. They're going to listen for full understanding and anticipate the information. They're going to ask questions for clarification, paraphrasing for more understanding, and send open and positive signals to the speaker with their nonverbal cues, finding meaning in the nonverbal cues that their listeners are providing them as well. So let's look at the 3 different listening models. The first is competitive. These are people who are going to debate. They're going to try to jump in and push their view upon you. These are people who are not necessarily interested in your point of view. The second is a passive listener. These are people who are interested in what you have to say, but they're maybe not as reflective. They're not seeking that critical thinking and understanding. And the third is an active listener. These are people who understand before they interject. They're going to restate to show understanding, and they're going to pay attention to everything that's being said to them. The 4 types of listeners are appreciative, empathetic, comprehensive, and critical. So appreciative listening is when you listen to something for enjoyment or for spiritual purposes. This is a drash or a sermon. This is motivational speakers or a comedian. Empathic listeners are listeners who show mutual concern and understanding. And comprehensive listeners are ones who are seeking facts. This is like going to a lecture or watching the news. And critical thinkers are ones who have done their homework, they've done their research, and they're coming into the conversation with a lot of judgment to validate any information that they need. So the most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't being said, hearing what's in between those lines, right? And so we do this by listening, by putting the spotlight on somebody else. When we listen to them between the lines, we're hearing and answering some of these questions, like what do they mean? What are they feeling? What is at stake? What are they not saying? What is their core need? And what do they really want? One way to help us build rapport and trust with our subordinates is to look at body language types. So not everybody is going to communicate the same. If you are constantly giving eye contact to somebody, it may come across to them as being aggressive. They may not like eye contact. That's where this typology comes in. So the first is a looker. These are people who think in pictures and images. These are people who are going to want that full eye contact and undivided attention. And you can talk to them by saying, I imagine, I see, let's picture this. The next is a listener. These are people who think in words and sounds. These are people who, when you're building rapport, are going to want to hear things like, let's talk, that sounds, I want to hear. And the last is a toucher. These are the people who want to give you high fives and touch you on the elbow and give you a hug. And maybe not during COVID-19, but you can communicate with these people by asking them and talking to them with words they understand, in feelings and tactily. Let's get in touch. How are you feeling? By better understanding how our subordinates communicate and want to be communicated with, we can make them feel a lot safer. And one of the ways that we can help in the communication process as a listener is through our body language. By providing good body language, by showing facial feedback, lifting our eyebrows, being open, showing eye contact, or averting our eye contact if we need to, nodding your head for understanding, physically removing yourself from your computer or turning off your phone, leaning forward to show your interest, exposing your heart to them and turning towards the speaker, and removing any barriers between the listener and the speaker in the conversation. Maybe tilting your head towards them as you're nodding. Yeah, I get that. Smile with your eyes and your mouth, and mirror their vocal tones and their body posture. So how does body language show? Can you think of ways that people show what they're saying without saying anything at all? Maybe some self-confidence, or some anxiety, or some boredom, or defensiveness, or frustration. How is this guy communicating? His eyebrows are raised. Maybe he's shocked, right? The word listen contains the same letters as the word silent. So why is silence so important? Silence encompasses the inner voice when we listen. Periods of reflection can help us better recognize our thoughts and our emotions and be more open to hearing the thoughts and emotions of our speakers or our subordinates. So how do we find these moments of silence? We can do this through meditation, maybe practicing by counting how many channels of sound you can hear in a room, clinking glasses, people talking, maybe soft sounds up above. So we can also do this by savoring mundane sounds like a dishwasher going or a soft fountain. We can also do this by practicing stillness and yoga and going out into nature, maybe going for a walk or a run or exercising, waking up early or staying up late and disconnecting from our electronics. One helpful tool is Mindfulness Coach. This is an app that the Veterans Administration developed for veterans and service members to learn how to practice mindfulness. It gives timed mindfulness and as well as different lessons on how to build your resiliency and improve your silent practice and your communication and listening. Leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. In ATP 6-22, it states that communication is to establish two-way communication with subordinates using verbal and nonverbal actions. And if we are a type of leader who's constantly speaking over our subordinates and our followers, we're going to create a bunch of sheep. And nobody wants to lead sheep. We want to be leading effective followers. So to lead effective followers, we have to be an effective listener and exhibit those effective listening skills by avoiding interrupting, listening more and talking less, refraining from judging and inserting our biases and our prejudice into our communication. We're going to listen from the speaker's point of view, and we're not going to dominate the conversation by speaking too much. We're going to abstain from giving unnecessary or inappropriate advice. We're going to be present and provide our undivided attention. And that's a huge one, is being present, right? Making sure that your subordinates can find you and see you. When you speak, you repeat what you know. When you listen, you learn something new. We always want to enter into these situations with the idea, like Bill Nye the Science Guy says, that everyone we meet can teach us something that we didn't know previously. And when we're listening to somebody, we want to keep asking those powerful questions and checking for our understanding. Questions like, what I heard was, so what you say is, I understand that you mean. By doing this, we're showing our listeners that we paid attention to what they said. We're showing them and giving them respect. And as a leader, this helps grow trust and helps with retention and resiliency within your team, and improves your overall readiness. And we're going to want to lead the way through our effective listening. In summary, we went over the 4 types of listening, 3 listening modes, mindfulness and silence, the 3 body language types, body language and how we can use it, and asking powerful questions, spotlighting the listener, and listening more and talking less. Are there any questions? All right, let's conduct a brief AAR. Are there any improvements? Are there any sustainments? All right, thank you so much for your time. This concludes my brief.